navigating money, business, and everyday life. So, to walk us through it all, we have an excellent panel with us this evening. Joining us tonight are Minister of Energy and Business, Senator Lisa Cummins, Director of the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, Mr. Bertram Johnson, and Public Counsel, Ms. Sandra Rawlins. And later, we will be joined by Chief Executive Officer of the Fair Trading Commission, Mr. Brian Reece, and General Manager, Trust Fund Limited, Mr. Gerald Amos. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to In Focus.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we're going to pose the first question to you, Minister Cummins. Barbados has been placing a strong emphasis on ease of doing business. What are some of the key reforms and initiatives currently underway to support entrepreneurs and businesses across the island?
So you're going straight to the big guns,
Straight
right?
to the top.
So when I first came to the Ministry of Business in 2022, November 2022, and I've told this story before, right? So people who've heard me say it before can be listening and even now, because it's true. If I got 10 calls from people talking to me about going into the ministry with responsibility for business, 10 of those calls spoke about the ease of doing business and how difficult it was to do business in Barbados. KIPO was a hot topic. Everybody had an issue. It takes too long to register a business, or turnaround times are too long. And over time, as I got more and more immersed in the ministry, those things became very clear to me that it was a truth. And people were not just complaining. So we then had a responsibility. Prime Minister always tells us in the cabinet, deconstruct and reconstruct. And we spent some time looking at what KIPO was really set out to do. We realized that this was an institution that had been set up, and for 30 years, we'd had a number of patches, a number of fixes. We'd had one big transformation with the introduction of the corporate digital registry, but still the problems persisted. And so we decided, well, let's take this whole thing apart and put it back together. So the first thing I would say to you is that we created Business Barbados as a brand new entity, having done that work of deconstructing and reconstructing. There were close to 300 processes that fell within KIPO, with over 30 pieces of direct and indirect legislation that had to be administered. And so it was something that we knew was going to take time. We brought in a business process re-engineer to look at those processes. We brought in a financial modeler to look at how the fees were levied on all of those services. We brought in a tech team, a digital coordinator, to then look at how the technology behind it actually worked in favor of the public. And then we brought in strategy teams. And so while we haven't yet crossed the rubric 100% of making it easy, we know where we're going. And we're now bit by bit, process by process, deconstructing still and reconstructing entirely new processes. So effective April 1, Business Barbados was created. We onboarded the staff members that opted to go over no job losses. That's the mantra for the government. And then we began the process of looking to scale up. So we're still scaling up, and you've seen in the newspaper and in the press the advertisements for Chief Operations Officer, Chief Executive Officer, marketing teams, and so on. So that process is ongoing. New teams are going to be added to the existing teams to be able to make sure we can meet the capacity. We're migrating onto a new platform that allows us to have the kind of functionality that we need on the basis of the processes that we re-engineered. And there's a whole brand new, fresh look and feel. And if I can just cap the initial work off very quickly, it is to say that historically, the work of the Registrar for Companies, which fell under the Companies Act, was also the Registrar for IP. And there's been a discussion in the newspaper and in the news recently about geographical indications and so on. But you had one person who was responsible for doing that. So we created a back office, a middle office, a front office, a leadership team, and we separated out the work of companies from intellectual property. And so effective December 1, you will now have a brand new director of IP for the first time in Barbados, to go along with what you now have in Business Barbados, a director of companies. And that work will take place over the coming year, in the new year, as we continue to scale Business Barbados, but more importantly, to be able to respond to the legitimate concerns about how easy or not easy it is to do business in this country.
So as we see this rollout, what are some of the things that the members of the public and persons operating businesses should expect to see?
So First of all, faster turnaround times. When we meet in our teams, the first thing we say first thing I always say to the teams, ask the business community represented in the corporate trust service providers, the lawyers represented in the Bar Association, the Small Business Association, the global businesses represented in the Barbados International Business Association. Ask them what they want to see first. Universally to a man, faster turnaround times. And so that's the first thing that we're working on. And the key to that is going to be the technology platform. So within the next few weeks, we should have completed the first migration onto a brand new platform, and that should make functionality easier. And then within the coming months, you'll see the completed transition onto an entirely new large-scale platform that will allow them to turn documents around far more quickly. What we've already started, if you go into Business Barbados in Baobab Towers, we call it another branch, kind of like a bank. So on the left of the building, when you go in, that's for small businesses. We've got a ton of small businesses in this country. Sole proprietors who set up companies. Who wants to spend their time navigating 30 pieces of direct and indirect legislation? That just blows your mind, far less mine, and I work in it, right? So we've separated the work then of the large companies from those of small companies. To the left, you'll be met by a branch ambassador first. They're going to ask you, how can I help? What are you here to do? Once they understand what you're here to do, they will guide you to a customer service representative that's now set up in Business Barbados in Baobab Towers. You go, they will talk you through whatever it is, whatever your services are, they're there to help you. On the right side of the building, that's now where the corporate trust service providers are. That's the big businesses. And sometimes a single clerk may come in and they're representing a company that has 100 different transactions to navigate. Can you imagine being a small business person standing in the queue with one person ahead of you doing 100 transactions? No. So we've separated that out to make sure that we respect people's time, we respect the processes, but we also make one big step towards doing business easier, more easily in this country.
Okay. Public Counsel, Ms. Rawlins, what role would your department have played in initiating this program and going forward?
Well, the Office of Public Counsel, the Consumer Guarantees Act, it authorizes the Public Counsel to mediate on behalf of consumers. Where there is a breach of the Consumer Guarantees Act, we will mediate on the part of the consumer, and if it cannot be resolved, then it will be upscaled to the Consumer Claims Tribunal. Okay, so the Consumer Guarantees Act allows for the protection of consumers, and it also provides for a fair and effective way for both the consumer and the supplier to trade in the marketplace in a confident way, because you have the consumer guarantees such as acceptable quality, fit for purpose, durable, safe as it pertains to goods, and as it pertains to services, then you want for the supplier to provide the service with reasonable care and skill, also fit for purpose, and done in a reasonable time. Now, it is important for persons who are going into business, or even those who are in business, to be aware of the Consumer Guarantees Act. The consumer guarantees the responsibility of the suppliers for goods and services. Now, they should ask themselves some questions. Questions such as, what kind of supplier of goods do I want to be? Do I want to provide goods that are of acceptable quality, that are fit for purpose, that are durable, that are safe, whereby customers will feel confident buying my product? You might want to ask the question, am I competent enough to perform the service that a consumer is asking me to do? Do I have the competency that I can do it with reasonable care and skill and fit for purpose within a reasonable time so that the consumer is satisfied? You might need to ask yourself the question, do I want to ensure that in providing goods and services that I am in compliance with the Consumer Guarantees Act? And if by chance I am in breach of it, will I be willing to provide for a repair, a replacement, or a refund? The reason why you have to ask all those things is because when the market is competitive, you want your business to thrive and not decline over time. So it means that you want to build a reputation that people feel confident in purchasing your goods or asking you to provide a service. And in doing so, it is hoped that the supplier will be one that can thrive in the business world.
Okay. Mr. Johnson, I know you also work very closely with the consumers. How does your department work to ensure that consumers are protected? Because I noticed that that is definitely something coming up for this discussion, ensuring that consumers' rights are protected.
Okay, but thank you first of all for your question, and thank you for being in focus here tonight. The Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs do have a commerce role and it also has a consumer role, but we'll focus on the consumer role. We also have provisions within Part 7 of the Consumer Protection Act where we look at recalls, and that is something that we guard dearly because we want to make sure that goods entering the market are safe, it's wholesome, and if there are any recalls, we work with our distributors or suppliers, and we would inform the public and work with the Ministry of Health to make sure that goods coming into Barbados not only are safe, they're properly labeled, but also if there are any recalls that we will remove those goods from the market. On the broader consumer trust, we, as a department, saw the need to share information to the consumers. And one of the things that we pride ourselves last year, October, is that we launched something called Price Check. And Price Check was really where the department collects data on a series of items, a basket of goods in a special basket, 300 in the basic basket and about 47 to 48 in the special basket. And we digitized that, put it in our data analytics framework, and then we brought out a new product called Price Check. And if you go to pricecheck.gov.bb today, you will see that you can see prices across the supermarket. And we believe that that was a great initiative to empower consumers to make choices, to have better informed decisions on where they can shop. We're not telling them where to shop, but they have that information. And we believe by doing that, we have now empowered consumers to make more rational choices, make more rational decisions. And we can all agree that the largest sector in any economy is the consumer sector. So we are really contributing to one of the largest sectors in the economy. But besides that, I will use the opportunity to say on the commerce side, that there's tremendous work also on the digitization of what we do to being that we're speaking about breaking the barriers. We would have in 2020, for instance, onboarded onto Asakuda. And so no more brokers have to come in to our office and so forth. You can just go on your computer or whatever, and we issue a license within 1 to 2 days. And that was tremendous, particularly in the COVID period when we had a pause, but yet trade was continuing. People were able to go, the traders, importers, online, and we were able to stay from our own virtual workspaces and dispatch licenses in a seamless manner. I think that was a tremendous opportunity. And being that we are sitting right now in November, about to go into December, if you cast your mind back with me about 3 years ago, you know persons that apply for liquor license would have to go to the magistrate courts and have to go through that process. But in 2022, April the 1st, the administration of liquor license came to the Department of Commerce. And now we have also digitized that process where you can apply for your license online. We would vet those licenses and you can approve those licenses. You get that coming back to your inbox. And the beauty of it is that we live in a digital world, so you don't need to now use cash. So you can actually use Easy Pay, you can pay for your license, and your e-license is generated, and you get that right in the comfort of your home. And I think with those initiatives, building out commerce in Barbados in a sustainable way, digitizing processes, whether it's on the commerce side or on the consumer side with price check, I think we have made tremendous inroads in terms of advancing the national trust to make sure that we are a modern economy.
Okay, thank you. We have a question coming in from the audience. This is from at Coffee Break Thinker. What type of support is available for young people who want to start their own business, Minister?
So this is actually such a great question because two things are happening as we speak. A few weeks ago, we launched the Innovation Growth Market, which is called the Junior Stock Exchange. And in preparation for that, we did a market assessment, market surveys. What we found was that sometimes larger, more established businesses, older, more established businesses were not quite so open to the idea of an equity investment in their business. But young people in business showed a high level of interest and they wanted to come in. So we've launched the Innovation Growth Market this week, last week I should say, we had the first onboarding. It was meant to be the IGM 200. We set out to onboard the first 200 companies. We ended up with 320 coming to the actual event, and we were going to be enrolling 50 of them in a training program. We increased that number to 75, and we anticipate that young people are going to benefit from that training program first. But even before we get to the equity stage of investment, the process of deconstructing and reconstructing institutions of government to better serve the public is very much underway. So Fund Access and Trust Loans, who you'll hear from in a little bit, they have a new mandate. 2026 is almost around the corner. Trust Loans is just 7 years old, but Fund Access is about 45 years old. And many of the systems, yes, have been updated in some ways, but is it the institution in 2026 now that is fit for purpose to make sure that every demographic group, including young people, are being catered to? And so in 2026, we're now in the process of designing the products and services that are offered by Fund Access, and one of the dedicated products is going to be for young entrepreneurs, young businesses, helping them to navigate. We also have brought on board and started discussions with young marketers, for example, because the way in which I may talk to you, the way in which I may talk to Bertram, very different. We're a different generation, so I may not always be in the best position to communicate to a younger demographic, younger business person who wants to be able to grow their business, and their mindset is very different than an older generation. So even our marketing is going to favor how we get into those specific demographic groups, including young people. So trust me when I tell you that we are working with all of the demographic groups, but we have a special focus and a special love for young people in business, because that's the future, right? So we have dedicated products that we're going to be rolling out in the market. So keep watching the space.
That's good to know. I'm sure young people will be pleased to know that they can know foster an entrepreneurial spirit, because the Ministry of Energy and Business has you covered.
And one of the things that is important to us is that we found, especially when Jerry comes, Trust Loans was for a lot of those persons who, you have an idea, you want to be able to translate that idea into a business, and you want to get started with a small amount of seed financing. They come, they get those finances. Then they come back again, they say, okay, we want some working capital, or we want to buy some supplies, or we want to be able to have some inventory developed. And they keep coming back. But guess what? Fund Access is meant to then be the pathway to help them to scale. We've now begun to integrate, not amalgamate the two entities, I have to be clear about that, but to integrate the back office procedures of Fund Access and Trust Loans, so that when people, young people, older people, in between people, when they come to Trust Loans and they want to get started, they get that seed financing, they're not applying all over again to Fund Access. So we're making it easier in that way to do it as well.
Thank you for that. We'll hear more about that later from Mr. Amos. We have another question coming in from the audience. This is from @HappySun. Are there any plans to support eco-friendly or sustainable businesses in Barbados?
So maybe I should just give the demographic groups that we have started to focus on from now. Women in business, that's one of the areas that we want to focus on. Eco-friendly and sustainability, Barbados has a huge resilience agenda, sustainability agenda, so that's definitely a demographic group there. Tech and innovation, digitally enabled businesses, those are other demographic groups that we're going to be focusing on, other sectors. Of course, energy, so energy falls into that space. Renewable energy in particular, new technology for renewables, we're looking at that as well. And I just mentioned young people. So those are some of the initial segments of the market that you will see us focusing on, and with a heavy emphasis as well on innovation and future forward business ideas and business concepts.
Okay, I know we've been talking a lot about digitization and technology. How can we assure persons that their online transactions and this new way of operating is safe, especially in times like these when we have issues with hackers and what's not?
Well, it's a great question. Cybersecurity is at the forefront of government's agenda. Obviously, we are transitioning into a digital space, digital transactions, and obviously, we work very closely with the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology to make sure that all of our platforms are secured. So when you go into that space to do your transactions, we place heavy emphasis to make sure that the data protection and everything that you do online is at international standards to make sure that we are absolutely secure. So, and the proof isn't really in the pudding, because we have been liquor licensed for a while, 3 years this year, and there haven't been any data protection breaches as people made transactions on EasyPay. So, it's a testimony that even as we go deeper into e-commerce and the space of e-commerce to make payments, that we continue to build the infrastructure, because what is 3 years before cannot be 3 years hence. So we continue to improve our security and cybersecurity infrastructure. And I'm confident, based on what we are doing already, there have not been no secure breaches in those spaces that which we operate our e-commerce platforms.
If I could just augment that though, in all of our engagements with MIST, there's also another arm of government that has been very active on security, and it is the Barbados Defence Force. And they have now had the role of cybersecurity vested in them. And so whether it is Business Barbados or any of the other arms of the ministry, we are working very closely with MIST and the Barbados Defence Force, both proactively and to make sure that reactively, when there are breaches elsewhere, that any patches that need to be applied system-wide are done in a timely manner. And so that it sits, because of its level of importance, in those two spaces.
Well, most of these initiatives of doing business easier in Barbados will be welcomed, especially by your younger demographic. What are some of the challenges, or have there been any challenges in getting the buy-in of maybe older business persons or any business persons basically that you all work closely with?
You want to start? I can always finish. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I think we are appropriately balanced. Obviously, the millennials, they use the technology, and therefore you have that. For example, grandma in St. Lucie might have a little challenge, and you find that she get her granddaughter or son to apply for the liquor license. We have that, and so we see that, and we see that persons are not afraid. At first, they might be, but we're moving into a society where older generation is embracing the technology, and we're seeing that through the platforms that we actually use. But beyond that, we are cognizant that we need to hold hands at some point. So even at the Liquor License Authority, which is now at the Division of Energy and Country Road, we have a dedicated staff member that if you have a challenge of actually interfacing with the technology or applying for it, we give you the hand-holding support, because we understand that some people will have those challenges, and we accommodate for that. And we found that was a tremendous value add to the services that we offer, and people are very thankful of that, and we will continue to do that. But from where I sit, I find that there has been a great uptake, both the older and the younger generation. And what we try to do is to make the platforms user-friendly, not too onerous, not too deep that you have, but it's very user-friendly, so the pages are very well constructed, not too many questions, and it's quite easy to navigate. But most of all, we provide support services for those who might have any challenges.
Minister?
So I agree with what Bertram has said, and I'll just add a couple of things. So if you keep people at the center of policy development, you can't lose sight of the fact that there are different demographic groups that have to be catered to. So yes, the technology is there, but Ms. Brathwaite on a Pike Corner bus coming into Bridgetown still needs to be able to understand where she's going, who she's going to see, and what she's doing there, because it can be a lot. So that person-to-person interaction can't be removed, even though the technology is there. The other part of it is the role that you play. So In Focus here, for example, is going to cater to a certain demographic group or a couple of demographic groups. And one of the things in the ministry we've just done alongside with our GIS interaction is to bring a PR team on board to work with the ministry. So we have a PR team working with Price Check. We have a PR team working with the energy team. We have now a PR team onboarded for the broader initiatives, because people are consuming a lot more information and in some of the wrong places. And facts are perhaps not always what we would want them to be. And we want to make sure that we give people accurate information, sources where they can go to get that accurate information, and a level of responsiveness. There is nothing more frustrating. And I say this to my team all the time. You are all first responders. When people call the ministry, you can't say, oh, I don't deal with that. That's somebody else. You have to find the answer and you have to guide that person, because if you didn't work in the government, it would be impossible for you yourself to figure out where on earth to go and find this in the government service. So if you know that for you, then if persons call and they need answers, provide them with some guidance so that they can find it. And we want to make sure that we are that ministry for people. Facilitation.
That's a nice segue into the question I have for Ms. Rawlins. How are the customer and consumer complaints resolved?
Okay, so what will happen is that they will call the office. They may speak to myself or Ms. Daniel Cox, who's the legal officer, or Mr. Leach, who's the investigative officer, or Ms. Bess, who is the administrative assistant. So we will listen to them and we will send an electronic form, a complaint form, electronically to the consumer, and with instructions as well. We give some guidelines with they provide their information, the supplier that they dealt with. They will also put a very detailed account of what occurred. We also encourage them to upload all documents. It could be receipt, photographs, text, conversation like from WhatsApp, because we need all this information, because then we have to go and investigate. So we have then to speak to the supplier to get their side of the story. So then we would then determine if there was an actual breach of the regulation. Because the regulation is, so say for example, the consumer must be an individual who is purchasing the goods or service for a personal reason. It cannot be, say, someone who is purchasing it for it to be used in their business or in a manufacturing process. So if it is something like that, then we would not be able to deal with it. If it is over $10,000, then the legislation does not allow us to deal with that either. In investigating, then once there's a breach, we will write the supplier and indicate the particular guarantee that they are in breach of. We have had mixed responses. Some suppliers will refund, or depending on what the item is, if it looks like it can be repaired, like say a pants that someone, or skirt that maybe the stitching came out, that could be repaired, and then we will get the consumer to determine if they're satisfied with it. Now, it could be an item like a watch, and maybe it could be repaired, but after it's being repaired, it may have the same type of symptoms as previously. So it means that there is something of substantial character that is preventing this watch from functioning properly. So then you're probably looking now at getting the supplier to replace or refund, okay? But there are some suppliers that when we write, they do not respond, or they stick to their site. They are not giving any refund, no replacement, and so on. So those will be the ones to go to the tribunal, and we will represent the consumer at the complaints, at the consumer complaints tribunal. Claims tribunal, sorry, the consumer claims tribunal. But in terms of services, so in goods, I find that most suppliers generally cooperate. There are only a few. In services, however, that is a different story where you have consumers who are making complaints from a mechanic who was supposed to fix a transmission. It may be picked down and not put back up. It could be for building cupboards and they're not done properly, tiling, fencing, so on. So that is an area that we need to educate consumers a lot on, so that they will know, have enough information to make a very informed decision as to who they will engage to do a service for them.
Thank you for that. There's a lot more information there that we can gain from what she said. However, we have to go to a short break, and then we did have a very insightful start to the conversation. But when we return, we will continue to look at the policies shaping our business environment and the rights and responsibilities that every Barbadian consumer should know. So get your questions and comments in. In Focus continues right after this short break.
Just a Conversation, the podcast where we discuss the topics that matter to you.
From real stories to real talk, we dive into everything. No filters, no fluff.
We're talking about the issues you actually care about. Finance, mental health, sports, entertainment, and so much more.
It's not just talk. It's conversations that bring us together, challenge us, and keep it real.
Don't have time to watch? No problem.
Just turn on the video while you're cooking and we'll keep you company.
Listen on your morning commute, while you work out at the gym, or even when you get home on evenings and chilling out.
Wherever you are, however you listen, this is your space for real conversations.
Join us.
Join us.
Just a Conversation.
Available on all streaming platforms or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media at GIS Barbados to share your thoughts or to stay connected.
Skip the line, stay inside, and pay the easy way online with the Pace Digital mobile app. Now you can pay for your renewed license, police certificate of character, and more via the EasyPay Plus platform with the Pace Digital mobile app. Log into EasyPay Plus, select the service, and confirm. Select the Pace Digital mobile app payment icon for your QR code. Open your Pace Digital mobile app and select the Pace Digital Pay tab. Scan the QR code and confirm your payment. Visit us online to learn more. Don't have the Pace Digital mobile app? Download it today.
Here's what you need to know if you're an incoming national under the full freedom of movement regime. Persons with a valid driver's license from any of the 4 participating member states, Barbados, Belize, Dominica, and St. Vincent and the Grenadines, will be entitled to use that driver's license in the host country until it expires. Furthermore, if an incoming national has a valid driver's license for a period of 6 months or more, he or she may apply to the Barbados Licensing Authority for said license to be transferred into a Barbados driver's license. Incoming nationals who do not possess a driver's license may get a valid driver's license by applying to the Barbados Licensing Authority, where the usual tests will be administered.
We
often believe that if we go to a further location to get an item that is cheaper by a few cents or $1, then you have actually saved money on that item. That is correct. But unfortunately, the distance that you've traveled that is further away from the more expensive item may actually be extra money that is spent, may exceed the money you're saving. So it may actually be better for you to buy an item that is $1 more expensive that is near to you than driving and spending an extra $15 just to save $1.
Hey farmers! Now you can access our farms right from your phone, tablet, or computer. Just visit agriculture.gov.bb. Go to resources and click download form. There you will find many of the forms you need, including incentives and rebate. And it gets even better. These forms are fully fillable. No printing, no hassle. Just type, save, and submit. Your requests get processed faster, saving you time and effort. So why waste a trip when you've got better things to do with your time? Go online today and get it done from the comfort of your home or farm. Visit agriculture.gov.bb. Click resources and download your form now. It's that easy.
Welcome back to In Focus. If you're now joining us, tonight's topic is breaking barriers to business in Barbados, and we are exploring business development and the rights of consumers. Joining us now is Chief Executive Officer of the Fair Trading Commission, Mr. Brian Reece, and General Manager, Trust Fund Limited, Mr. Gerald Amos, or Jerry to most of us. Before we resume our discussion though, just a reminder to our audience that you can submit your questions and comments right now, and our panelists, the experts, will respond to as many of them as possible. I'm going to throw the first question to you, Mr. Reece.
Thank you.
How does the FTC work to create a competitive and healthy environment to foster entrepreneurship in Barbados?
Sure. Well, I'd start first of all by saying that very often when people think of the FTC, there is a belief that there's a slant towards the consumer protection aspect. But the truth is, a lot of what we do for consumers also redounds to the benefit of entrepreneurs. If we create an environment in which the consumer feels comfortable, i.e. they understand their responsibilities, they understand the engagement that they have with the businesses, then it also provides the level of structure and the knowledge of the business environment that entrepreneurs need to make sure that their businesses are also just as effective in delivery of services or the provision of goods that they hope to do. Very often businesses are unaware of the nuances of the Consumer Protection Act, and therefore they may fall into a trap. And what we try to do is ensure that that knowledge that we provide to the consumers is equally provided to the businesses in the Barbadian economy, in the sector, so as to provide them with the guidance they need to remain on track, to be competitive, to ensure as well that they can compete with those more established entities that may have the internal counsel or what have you that can guide their processes. So we try to make sure that, as the name suggests, we are ensuring there's fair trading, that the trading is fair.
I know that some of your services seem to be very similar to that of what Ms. Rawlins was discussing just now, public counsel.
Yes.
How do we differentiate between the two?
So the differentiation is very subtle. but it is more so a connectivity of the work that we do. Mrs. Rawlins may have mentioned that she looks for the assurance of durability and that the product is safe. We looked more so at the contractual terms that exist between the consumer and the businesses. We also look in some measure at the safety of items as far as recall is concerned, but most of the aspects related to quality and durability, etc., lie within the Office of the Public Counsel. We also ensure that consumers are aware of their rights so that they can better interact within the environment. I think it's really important to understand that the confidence that a consumer has in the business environment within any sector really redounds to the benefits that the economy needs, which is that the consumer has the confidence, they are willing to purchase more, they're willing to involve themselves in innovative ideas, and therefore the economy can expand as well. So it really is a sharing of the role as far as what we do and what the Office of Public Counsel does as well. Our legislation specifically is the Consumer Protection Act. That is our mandate, or we operate pursuant to that act, whereas the Office of Public Counsel is more guided by the Consumer Guarantees Act.
Okay, good to know. Jerry, good night, welcome. We would have heard Minister allude to some of the services of your department earlier. Tell us some more about that and how it would help business persons interested in entering business in Barbados.
Okay, first let me just say thank you, Sharifa, for having me here tonight. I realized earlier the Minister was very excited about 2026, and I myself, listening to the Minister, I am very, very excited about 2026, so let me explain why. I think that in 2026 we need to look at entrepreneurship a little different. When Trust Fund first started, we started off very well, then we had COVID. COVID came around 2020, and we found that when persons come to the Trust Fund, they were coming because it was a necessity. Now, I think 2026 going forward, it has to be about opportunities. Let me explain that as well. Our office is on Harbour Road. When I walk Harbour Road, I'm nervous. Let me explain to you why. For the year 2025 in the US market, AI cost the loss of about 45,000 jobs. In October alone, AI cost the loss of about 35,000 jobs in October in the US. When you look at the Harbour Road, you see all persons doing call center work, young people. I am sure, and I don't want to scare anybody, but I just want to be candid as possible, that with the advent of AI coming in, a lot of those young people are going to be out of work. So it has now for them to be looking for opportunities coming out of the same AI. And that is why I think, and the Minister spoke about young people, that is why I think young people are going to thrive, because innovation is going to take over and they're going to take those opportunities and run them. From the trust loan point of view, this is what we need to do. We need to have a revamped entrepreneurial educational framework where we get out there into the trenches and we start to actually teach persons entrepreneurship, not just from going from community to community, but really with a framework, with a whole plan as to how we're going to accomplish this. So right now, we see ourselves as the nursery. I'm sure you heard the Minister talk about the revamp of the trust loan. We don't only want to be the nursery now. We want to be the primary school, and we want to be the secondary school. So that when we start to raise an entrepreneur, we are not just handing them over too early, but we are taking them through the full development cycle, so that when we hand them over to the fund access or the commercial bank, they are ready to hit the road. Even as the Minister spoke about AGM 200, investor ready to take on the world. So when we start talking about the new things that we're doing, 2026 indeed. So I'm happy. I want to see it turn. I want to get to work, and I want to get going.
So financial literacy, is this part of your plans as well?
Financial literacy has to be embedded in everything that we're doing. Yesterday we were at a forum, and all I was hearing was financial literacy. I was saying the Minister gone, I would know she would have been loving this, right? Everything coming from the presenters is about financial literacy.
But what does it really mean?
Well, it means being literate about your financial status, being understand about investments, understand about how you could manage your dollars, understand about costing and pricing. All these things are important for you when you become financially literate. The most important thing that you need to understand is how to create some fiscal space with what you're doing in order to properly invest the rest of that money into something that can grow and take your business from one level to the next.
Okay, I'm hoping we can get back to that, but we have a question coming in from the audience already. This is from, I'm thinking, Sin Shen Long. This question is regarding intellectual property. Does the Business Barbados office offer IP valuation services? And if not, are there any solutions for this service in Barbados currently?
So that's typically a private sector role. You would typically be working with the legal fraternity. There are a number of IP lawyers who would take responsibility for that. We did try to put some additional advisory services in the IP office in Business Barbados, and so once the new lead comes in, there's meant to also be an intellectual property advisory board, and that is going to be there, and that's meant to help guide people with questions like this, where to go, where to access those services. But I also want to come back to the last point raised by Jerry. And I love the excitement is infectious, and so that's really the buzz at this point. We, in 2021, I believe it is, would have launched the last iteration of the National Financial Literacy Program. Then in 2022, we rolled out some amendments to the program. We scaled up then and introduced a schools program. And I remember in the first year, I said to the team, oh, I want to be in, I can't even remember anymore what the number was, but they looked at me sideways because they thought the number was too high. But then last year, I remember saying to the team, look, math and English are taught in every single school in this country. We can't say to parents when they send their children to school, math is only available in some schools but not in others. And equally with financial literacy, I can't say to people it's available only for some but not for all. And as at September this year, we are in 90 schools. All of the primary schools, the secondary schools, youth advanced core, all of them have we even are in Ann Hill schools with children with special needs and disabilities. We're there as well. So we rolled out a massive campaign for what we call the Flight program. We had a summer experience at the Cave Hill School, actually here on the Cave Hill campus for that. And then we rolled out even further. Community, financial literacy, people in the community organizations can get involved, and also for the businesses. If you are interested in business, like Jerry just talked about, there is that. And the final thing I would say on that is that we realized in the ministry there was a gap, business development. So, okay, you get the money, Jerry, primary school, nursery school, secondary school, but you need a mentor, you need a shepherd, you need somebody to help guide you about making decisions when you're starting a business, especially if you're a young person. So we've now revamped the way in which financial literacy is done in trust loans and in fund access, embedded financial literacy in all of their programs in the two institutions. And again, for 2026, we'll be rolling out an entirely newly structured business development portfolio that focuses on providing support for persons who are not necessarily clients of trust loans or fund access, but generally just need the support.
We have another question. Thank you very much, Minister. Jason P. wants to know, how can small businesses compete when larger companies control so much of the market?
I think I'd love to jump in on that one.
Sure.
And it's interesting that everything we do at the FTC, just for reference, we have three main divisions within the FTC: consumer protection, utility regulation, and also we have our fair competition division. And in each of those divisions, they all work towards ensuring that competitiveness or a competitive environment is created so as to ensure that small businesses can actually penetrate. If we take, for example, the utility regulatory division, very often persons associate that with the regulation of large public utilities. But by regulating large public utilities, you then actually provide an opportunity for small businesses to get involved. The reason being, I'll use the electricity sector as an example. If the public utility is not operating in an efficient way and their costs are escalating, it means that the cost of electricity will also escalate. If we are properly regulating the sector and providing for an efficient delivery of good service also, then an entrepreneur has less of a cost associated with the establishment of his business, as it relates to his electrical usage, etc. That's just one example. If we relate it to fair competition, it may be a little bit more obvious in that the Fair Competitions Division is specifically looking at anti-competitive business practices and reducing the likelihood or mitigating the likelihood of those business practices, stopping those small entrepreneurs, stopping those small businesses that wish to take a foothold in the sector from being able to do so, because they're looking to ensure that whether it is that the larger business has a larger grasp on the sector, greater than 40% hold on the sector, what can we do to mitigate that grasp that they already have? What can we do to ensure that there is competitiveness between those businesses within the same sector? And it ultimately redounds to the consumer as well, because if there is competitiveness, then it also ensures that there is a fair pricing of the service or the good that is offered to the consumer. So I'll revert to the original question. What do? We ensure that there is competitiveness within the sectors. We ensure that there's transparency across the way businesses operate. And we ensure as well that the consumer gets the best product and therefore can identify the businesses that they really want to participate with, that they wish to engage with on a transaction. And if a small entrepreneur is able to provide that service or those goods consistently and of a high quality with good customer service as well, which is something that I believe is what differentiates a lot of businesses, then that small entrepreneur has as great a likelihood of succeeding within the sector as any other larger business as well.
And this is rooted in what Jerry would have said earlier. This is basically education.
It is a lot about education.
Yeah, you need to be educated in the different aspects.
And both aspects of the transactional paradigm have to be educated. The businesses, more especially the small entrepreneurs, and the consumers. Rights and responsibilities are required of both of them. And the educational process, us getting out there and engaging and finding out what the issues are and ensuring that persons are aware of what their responsibilities are and how they can participate best is so critical.
Thank you very much for that. We have another question coming in from the audience. Ard Thomas, what are the next steps to improve customer service and accountability in both public and private sectors?
That's a big ticket item there too. Certainly in my own ministry, we are currently in an advanced stage of recruiting to have a portal in the ministry. One of the things that troubles me in the ministry is when people have to call me as a minister to say, Lisa, can I get help with this? I sent this into the ministry, or I sent this into that ministry, and I haven't gotten a response. That's not good customer service, right? And so one of the things we're now introducing in the ministry, using a technology platform, when requests come into the ministry or when applications come into the ministry, there has to be a logging system that says electronically when it was received, whose desk is it at, and where is it now? Because your turnaround time may be 1 day, 2 days, but it may not even need to take that long because you use the technology, you use the manpower in ways that are effective to respond to customers, because we're talking business, right? The longer an application, for example, for a license sits on someone's desk unattended to because they may be on vacation and no one passed it on to someone else, and then no one knows that it's there, that's money lost. The longer cargo sits in the port because it's awaiting an approval, somebody's paying port charges. So I keep saying to my team especially, put yourself in the position of your customer, of the consumers, because what happens is that your inefficiencies, if it is your fault, will redound to the disadvantage of you when you leave the ministry, because when that product hits the shelf, all of the costs that that importer, for example, has picked up because of your delays are going to be passed on to the consumer. So that's the public sector. In Business Barbados, we populated the board with many of the associations that are very much involved in customer service or business facilitation. Small Business is there, ICAB is there, the International Business Association is there, and one of the first things we set out to do with them was to say, well, ICAB is not on the board actually, but they're part of the amalgamation team. We set out to say to them, how do we simplify processes for the public? If I'm a large business, do I need to go through the same hoops? If I'm a small business, do I need to go through the same hoops that a conglomerate is going through to get access to my audited financials, or can a management account suffice if I need to go to the bank? So we're now working with the various sector associations to get them to simplify these processes. Lawyers, things may take too long to get through the legal system. How do we work with them to see how we can simplify the processes in everybody's best interest? And that's a work in progress as we speak.
Thank you very much. Next question coming in from, okay, sorry about that. We're coming in from Pamela. What are the steps taken when investigating and enforcing consumer laws? Mr. Reece?
Thank you very much. So as far as the FTC is concerned, we want to ensure that, and we receive a number of complaints that come to us either by walk-ins, and we welcome walk-ins, by email, etc. Once we receive a complaint, the first thing we want to do is make sure that it isn't frivolous, that it is given in good faith. There is a consumer who is seeking an opportunity to have redress to some concern that they have. So that's the first step we want to take. Then we want to look at things like the advertisement, or whatever promise was made in whatever form it was made, so as to ensure that we understand that it was done likewise from the business's point of view in good faith and in compliance with the laws of Barbados. We also then look at the contractual terms that may exist, and not only the written contractual terms, but any implied terms as well. Because again, we need to ensure that businesses are operating pursuant to the legislation within the country as far as the transactions with consumers are concerned. Beyond that, then, we have a mandated right to investigate, looking at documentation, looking at any other information that is in regard to that transaction. It may be emails, it may be promises verbally made, the quantity or quality of the item that is under discussion. And from there we can make a determination internally, and we genuinely hope that through mediation, through an internal investigation within the FTC, that we can solve the issue. At the end of the day, if we're able, through mediation, through some non-litigious approach, to solve an issue, it also reduces the cost to the consumer, and it reduces the cost as well to the business that is involved in the particular matter. But if, for whatever reason, the two parties cannot meet, to agree on the redress.
Purchases, like appliances or vehicles, especially from individuals or persons selling on online marketplaces.
So those rights in the online environment are just as critical as they are in the brick and mortar environment as well. And any requirement that is expected in a face-to-face engagement is also expected of those parties, those businesses who are providing any goods or services in the online environment. And we've realized that our environment in Barbados, or I should say the business environment in Barbados, has changed. You have a lot more online opportunities to purchase. And so therefore we at the FTC have now been looking specifically at that to make sure that in doing our business scan, in doing our data collection as far as compliance issues are concerned, that we are specifically looking as well at the online environment to provide consumers with that kind of guidance. So the shorter answer would be that your rights and the responsibilities of businesses do not change because of the fact that the service or the good is being provided, or the goods are being provided through an online portal.
Jerry, I'm going to come back to you now. You would have mentioned a very scary truth that could happen in the future based on the introduction of AI. But we do have services here that can help persons foster their businesses and develop their businesses, and obviously trust fund is one of them. But we had fund access before that. What was the difference between the two organizations?
Well, as I said earlier, I see the trust loan as a nursery where we take persons from seed capital We help them develop the business. We help to come to a point where they are then able then to put the product on the shelf. But then when they want to scale it financially, then they could go over to fund access or a banking institution. My fear, and I'm glad that the minister is correcting it, come 2026, is I think that sometimes we hand over too early. Right? And when you hand a client over too early, before you fully develop that client, I think we almost send them up to fail. Right? So the role of fund access is still very important, because fund access takes you from where trust loan stops up to $150,000. So I think they still have an important role to play. Just that the synergies need to be tighter, and I think the minister alluded to that earlier when she was speaking.
Yeah, she would have mentioned the back end portion would have been different.
Right. Yes, the back end is definitely different, but when Jerry talks about where fund access goes up to $150,000. But trust loans, they start at as small as $5,000 and then $10,000. Those are the tranches that typically trust loans would lend. But what we found, and we've just done earlier in this year in August, an MSME policy for the country, one of the key things was that there's a large informal sector in the country. Many people who've never had a bank account, many people who have never interacted with any financial institution, and yet they're running businesses. So when they want to go to scale those businesses or to develop those businesses, they have nothing to take to a financial institution. Trust loans was created for those persons, to be able to give them the ability to build a financial history that then they can have a formal relationship with another financial institution. So trust loans is that first chance, taking a chance on people, trusting people to do the right thing with government funds to be able to start their businesses. Once those businesses are started, once you borrow the first $5,000, you can go back to Jerry and his team and borrow a $10,000. And what Jerry will tell you, I'm not sure why he hasn't told you yet, they have a lot of repeat clients who go back for not the first 5,000 and then a second 10,000, who borrow 10,000, 10,000, 10,000 in tranches. So the key thing here for us is to see, okay, how do we take this person who is still operating in that very small micro space, how do we take them and help them to graduate? How do we get them to a stage where $150,000 makes sense for them to be able to grow that business? Business development is a part of that. Financial literacy is a part of that. But then let's go a little bit further. There's also the Enterprise Growth Fund that the government has access to. And incidentally, we just brought on a new chairman from Fund Access. And one of the things he said to me that I remember was, I didn't realize on the outside looking in how many things there are that the government is doing for people, especially in the business space. So we also started working with the commercial banks, because start out trust loans, move on to fund access, and then all of a sudden your business has grown from micro to small to medium to large. You're exporting, you're a large company, and you have equity, and the possibilities are endless. And that's really the point of matching people and meeting people where they are. That's where these institutions come in.
Okay, I have a question for you, Mr. Reece, with regards to a recent viral post with regards to some car scams was online, and we were wondering, how do we protect our consumers in instances like that? When they buy the cars and they're not able to, they're stolen cars. How do you get recourse in a situation like that?
So that matter would not specifically fall under the aegis of the Fair Trading Commission. But what I would share with you as far as the Fair Trading Commission is concerned is that what we would try to do is ensure that all persons understand that they need to be very cognizant of the terms and the conditions related to the transaction that they're about to partake in. It is more a preventative approach that we would wish to encourage persons to take. Identify who exactly is that business. Ensure that you are being as careful, as particular in terms of the identification of any risks that are associated with engaging with that particular business. Know your rights. Know what the responsibilities of those businesses are before it reaches a point where, unfortunately, there's a catastrophic ending. I think that would be really where I would want persons to focus their energies, to be as proactive as possible, to realize that they're an active part in the sector. The consumer is an active part in the business environment. They're not there to simply take what is given. but they're there to identify whether or not there are challenges, whether or not there are potential pitfalls, and they themselves have to take recourse if they believe that there is a possibility for them to be disenfranchised.
Sometimes we say to people, you know, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. We provide import licenses for vehicles coming into the country for second-hand cars, and many times people call businesses in particular, or if somebody wants to bring in a car, and the information that they have submitted does not line up. And at times, we don't approve the license, or we go back and we require them to provide additional information. We work with all of the legal authorities, all of the enforcement agencies as well. So sometimes, if you are looking at a vehicle that costs $10 and you are buying it for $1, something is off. And I think that's the first red flag that people should be paying attention to, because that maybe you may have been complicit unknowingly is something that's much bigger than you. And we don't want people, and they've worked for their money and they have responsibilities to spend money on scams because they think that they're savings, when in actual fact, there are scams.
So I think
I can add a little bit more, because I want to be very clear as well. You'd mentioned specifically in the scenario that you provided stolen vehicles, and that is why I would say that is something that we would encourage them to involve the police service in. But I would say though that we still remain there willing to assist, and if persons have queries after having unfortunately been involved in incidents like those, we would welcome the opportunity to guide them, to be able to give them information on what their next steps can potentially be. If it has not reached a point where it is a police matter, we will try our best to assist, like I said, to mitigate the issue through mediation. But primarily, I think I really want to encourage persons to participate in the sectors that they're performing any transactions in, with a knowledge of what is going on. Be an active part of the transactional process. Don't sit back and expect that, as the Minister said, that everything that glitters will be gold, and therefore I have nothing to fear.
But I think it's clear to say that the Ministry of Energy and Business and its departments that it works with are here to protect the consumer and the business owners, entrepreneurs as well. So we've come to the end. I'm going to offer you each a final comments.
I will go first.
I think so.
First, I want to go back to a point that you made earlier, and it's a pet peeve. Actually, Brian and myself, we were discussing it earlier, and that is customer service. I think first and foremost in everything we do, as the Minister said, we must look after our customers, both internal and external. So for me personally, the Minister spoke about timelines. My phone is constantly on. A client could message me at any point in time, and I try to return that. Because I see it in part, because I always put myself in the position that if I was in that position, I would want a return call. At my laptop daily, I track every application that's coming in, how long it sat at officer desk, and this is true technology, right? How long it stays at officer desk, and when it moves. Because it's, for me, it's important that if the Minister calls me and says, Sharifa said that she did X, I could go and I could say, okay, yes, it's correct. Let's move on Sharifa, because she was here for X amount of time. We pride ourselves in our turnaround time. What we do not, however, do is excuse training. So that is always the point where we take a little longer, because we emphasize that training is important. But for us, I want to make sure when Sharifa applies, she's in, she's out, and she's satisfied, right? So for me, customer service is paramount.
Thank you. Brian?
Yes, thank you. I think Jerry started off by saying that he's looking forward to 2026. Well, I too am looking forward to 2026 with a similar level of enthusiasm, because we're looking at developing a case management system, which is similar to what Jerry has just mentioned to you, where we can then identify where exactly any matter within our system is, what exactly may be the delay if one exists, but more importantly, to ensure accountability within our systems. We are also looking at standard operating procedures, making sure that our standard operating procedures are no longer those documents on a desk that have collected dust, but become living documents, that we can identify how we can improve on them, how we can make the opportunity for our stakeholders to engage with us a better experience, customer service again. But timeliness is critical, and therefore project management is something that we are ramping up on within the FTC. Anything that we do is a project. If we receive your complaint, it is a project. If we have a matter to deal with a public utility, that is a project. And we need to ensure that all of those things I've just mentioned are combined so that we can provide that level of customer service that Jerry mentioned, because our stakeholders, especially our businesses that rely on our involvement, they need timeliness. Time is money. And if we are holding businesses back, then it is more likely that they will be unsuccessful in their pursuit of their ultimate goal. So those few things I would mention, but 2026, as Jerry said, we look forward to it.
Thank you very much for that. Minister Cummins.
I'm always excited by everything. I'm excitable, so I'm excited by the process of transformation. I'm excited by the fact that the ministry has a huge number of projects which are underway, all in the interest of Barbadians and people who live and call Barbados home. While we want to make sure that we are the best at what we do, Barbados is the best place to do business, the best place to protect consumers, the best place to find products and services that are world class, best place to find growing and thriving businesses. We want also to be the best in class globally as well. And so we're setting these standards against where our competitors are going. So we're not just doing this for us. We're not just doing this in this local space, but we're looking to see where Barbados needs to be positioned in the world in all of these spaces. And we're depending on everybody to help us to get there.
Thank you so much for that. Well, tonight's discussion has shown that building a strong business sector and empowering consumers are two sides of the same national mission. From streamlined business procedures to market fairness, from consumer protection to financial literacy, the Ministry of Energy and Business are working to ensure that our consumers and our businesses are functioning in the way that they are supposed to across multiple fronts to support a more dynamic and informed Barbados. A sincere thank you to our panel, and thank you our viewers for joining us for another edition of In Focus. I'm Sharifa Medford-Gilkes. See you next time as we continue to bring the issues that matter into focus.